Hello, everybody. I'm Jose Betancourt. I attended my first photography workshop, and it was really awesome and helpful. This particular workshop was called Fuji Live. It was hosted by Tomasz and Jans. Now, those particular individuals, they do host the Fuji Love podcast, which you can find on iTunes. Now, this workshop was mainly focused on street photography. I somewhat consider myself a street photographer. I live in New York City, so I have all types of scenery and subjects, and I have so many opportunities to take great photos. And not that I'm saying that I take great photos, but the opportunities are there. And I assumed that street photography was, okay, I see a bunch of skateboarders doing their thing in Tompkins Square Park, for example, and I'm just going to take somebody doing a particular stunt, time it so that they're in the air and hit the shutter button and make it black and white. But I discovered that street photography in particular is there's so much to it that goes on before you even hit the shutter, before you capture your final image that you might have in your head. It involves planning ahead of time. And I don't mean the night before, because with street photography, it's just so unpredictable. I mean, as the situation occurs, let's say you find harsh lighting and deep shadows in a particular corner, and you figure, okay, let me sit here for a while and see what develops. That's the type of planning I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, you see someone coming along who is wearing a dinosaur outfit, and that person is getting ready to walk into this particular lighting pattern, and in your head you're thinking, okay, once that person is close, when do I hit that shutter? Do I keep the shadows deep? Do I raise my exposure so that the lighting is harsh and pure white? Do I make it black and white? Do I make it color, et cetera, et cetera? There's so much going on. Do I want motion blur? Do I want the background blurred out, or do I want to put this scene in f8 so everything is shown in the foreground and the background? So it's so much there's so much going on in street photography, and that's one thing I learned because Jans in particular, he is so passionate about street photography, and he's very critical, but it's criticism that helps the individual. So everything he was saying was really helpful, and it got me thinking, because I never really thought about certain things they were pointing out. And the biggest thing was utilizing the simple things like the lines of the street, the lines that the cars may form when they're parked, lighting, of course. If you're into photography, you learn about lighting. So lighting was nothing unusual, but just leading lines, pre-planning on the spot, and getting close too, which is something I really don't particularly do, and I never really thought about. I never thought, you know what, I should get close as possible to my subject because I want to fit them into this particular scene. But then it's not only about getting close, it's about getting close to someone of interest and then fitting them into the picture you have in your head, or the picture that is developing. And that is a skill that takes a lot of practice, a lot of patience, a lot of practice, and eventually you work your way out of that fear of getting close to people. Now, Tomasz was shooting with a 35mm f1.4 and a Fuji X Pro 2. By the way, of course, it's called, the workshop was called Fuji Love Live, so everyone had Fuji cameras. And there's a particular love that we all have for the Fuji brand and the community that is formed around the cameras and just the overall brand that really brought a special magic to this workshop, because we all got along. We all shared our own tips, our own personal experiences with photography, especially for those of us who want to get into a business in photography. I personally learned a lot from a bunch of great people. But why would I take a street photography workshop? What is the point? And what were the benefits after that workshop that I took with me? Well, the biggest benefit was that, and the biggest reality, was that I had a lot to learn about street photography. And the reason why I keep bringing up street photography is because I feel personally, this is nothing that anyone said, Tomasz or Johns or anyone attending this particular workshop said. This is something that I personally feel. I feel that street photography can get you ready for any type of photography you want to do, any type of genre you want to specialize in, whether it's landscapes, sports, weddings, or portraits. There's so many different things to do within photography, and I feel that street photography puts you right in the middle of all of it. You want to set up a nice, beautiful landscape photo with subjects, interesting subjects, and a bunch of activity going on at the same time. You can do that with street photography. If you want to capture someone who, as I stated before, is wearing a dinosaur suit, and they're in a particular frame that has a great background, and you want to get up close, you have to learn how to do portraiture. So even capturing things as it's going on is very similar to sports photography. So you have to learn the basics. You have to learn what shutter speed does, where the light is coming from, how much ISO you want to raise or lower your camera to, what type of aperture you want to shoot these subjects. I was surprised that for Jans, for example, he was using an XT3 with a 56 millimeter f1.2, and he shoots at 1.2 in street photography. And he gets really close to his subjects. He's an amazing photographer. And just the fact that with a 1.2 aperture, he was able to get these extremely beautiful, sharp images. It just says a lot about his confidence and his technique. So it wasn't as if, for me, a lot of times I was using the 16 millimeter f1.4 previous to this workshop. And that 16 millimeter, fantastic lens, by the way, it allows me to get really close from a position where I have my camera shooting from the hip, and I can get really close without intruding. Whereas Tomasz or even John, who was taking this particular workshop as well, he paid for this just the same way I did. John was getting in there and getting close and throwing himself on the floor and kneeling. I mean, he was really into this, and that's something that I personally cannot do. So I was able to see a bunch of people who were at my level or above really work at a craft that they did not have any experience in. But you could see the levels of confidence. And I don't mean confidence where I feel, hey, you know, I'm not capable of developing a scene and taking a particular shot. I'm talking about confidence in getting really close to somebody, putting the camera fairly close, make it somewhat obvious you're taking a photo of them, but making it not too obvious. And that's a skill that requires a lot of practice. And even with a lot of practice, you may not ever get to that point. But I saw them do it. I saw them just walk up to people, hold the camera a particular way. Some people like to use the rear tilt screen, but you can tell they're still aiming that camera towards someone. And then the end result was really, really impressive. So that's what I took from this particular workshop. It was how to use my feet to get closer, to get further, to hunt a particular section of a street. For example, let's say you're in Times Square, which is where we were. We met up at a location, did, the workshop, the talking part of the workshop, and then we actually went out and practiced these techniques together. And so one of the techniques was to sit at a corner for about 15, 20 minutes, just observe everything, try to find someone interesting. Sometimes you have to follow them for a little while. If they go too far away from you, then just let them go if you can't get that shot. But the whole point was to try to create something out of nothing. And that's partly why I got into podcasting in 2006. I've been doing it for a very long time. It's because you're creating something. You're using your mind, and you're seeing what you can develop out of a blank canvas, let's just say. So imagine using all of these techniques in a wedding, and you're trying to, for me personally, I'm more of a documentary style type of photographer. Whether most of my photos, you'll see people doing their thing, whether they're working or just going along with their day in New York City. I'm not the type to go up to someone and take a close-up. But imagine using those skills in a reception during a wedding or an event that you're covering or a concert. There's just little things that you will take from street photography. Street photography basically is a combination of everything you've learned within your genre of specialty and utilizing it to basically tame the unknown, tame the wild, and make something beautiful out of chaos. And it kind of sounds like a Joker movie or a quote the Joker would say, but that's basically how I feel about street photography, based on what I learned at the Fuji Love Live workshop. It was really awesome. The people were super, super friendly, knowledgeable, and just overall great people to be around with for 2 days, and built some relationships, and I'm glad, because these workshops, it's just not about learning specific techniques in photography. Yes, that's the main goal, but also networking, meeting people who can do things you can't, and vice versa, and just networking with people who are passionate about something you are passionate about as well. It's a truly great experience, and one that I highly recommend. If you can get into a workshop, do it at least once, and chances are you're going to have a great time. So that was my experience with the Fuji Love Live workshop we had in Manhattan, New York, and I look forward to the next one. So, as always, I'm Jose Betancourt. I appreciate you guys listening to my podcast, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.